the report basically had stories that I knew happened, stories that I didn't know happened but sounded on brand, and then a couple of stories like, yep, I was there for that, including one where I'm like, that's not where it happened, that's not how it happened. I believe the story about him asking a player if he shaved his nether regions. The report, yes. The owner of the team started an impromptu casual conversation, Jess, about, hey, do you shave your nuts? The report said it happened while the player was lifting weights. It did not. It happened in the video theater right before we were about to address the team, right before we were about to play the Spurs in the playoffs, before game 1. So
good pep talk.
Yeah. I mean, which is funny because it came on the heels of an actual good pep talk he gave. He had donated some money to the heart hospital, and they'd done a lot of research. They're the ones that found out when doing CPR, you don't need to do mouth-to-mouth. Really, the most important part of the CPR is the pumping of the chest. And so he tells the story about how they pioneered the first portable heart transplant. Comes in a backpack, and they give it to this firefighter who, needed a heart after an accident on the job and all that. And it was like, and how this guy kind of fought, and even when it looks like there are no options out there, we can still find a way and all that. And we're like, wow, man, Robert really brought it today. And I still, to this day, I can't remember the transition. But it went from that to, hey, who here shaves their nuts? And so, but that's an example of inappropriate workplace conversation, and again, a sophomore juvenile sense of humor or whatever, or just a lack of boundaries. But that's not the worst of the stuff. The worst of the stuff is using the N-word at least 5 times, recorded, documented, and confirmed by this report.
One of those gets him gone in video or audio form, correct? One, if we have any of that, joking or otherwise, if you've got an owner and the scandal is said the N-word and we've got it, is that enough?
Before we keep going, I do want to point out he also owns the Phoenix Mercury.
Yes.
So he owns a team in a league where it's all women, predominantly black women. So it's really, when you've looked at all the issues the WNBA have had with raising capital and improving marketing and with their CBA and charter flights, whatever issue you want to take up, like these are, some of the people that are in charge of, I guess, growing that league. And now he's being accused of saying or has been found to have said racist slurs.
Found by his league.
Made sexist, misogynistic comments to employees.
Yes.
And to answer your question, Dan, yes. I think if there was a proverbial smoking gun...
There's no context, though, right? Sophomoric, joking. There's no hateful. There's no nuance around that. Owner caught saying that word on audio. Gone.
Here's the exact quote from the findings. Witnesses said that Sarver was erratic and unpredictable, and that his sense of humor, the perceived driver between some of the conduct described in this report, was, quote, sophomoric, awkward, and inappropriate for the workplace. Witnesses said that Sarver believed workplace norms did not apply to him and viewed common conventions as to what language he should use and what conduct he should avoid as a form of challenge. That right there is A, extremely accurate description of Robert Sarver's behavior and approach, and B, it tells you that there should be enough coupled with the things that he's alleged to have said. Should be enough.
But enough for what? To throw him out of the league?
Enough for there to be a stronger reaction to what he did than $10 million in 1 year banishment. Now, the problem with it is, and I said this on Basketball Illuminati, the problem is the people who are tasked with making this ruling have to keep into account that there are 29 other owners who may have similar, maybe not to that level, but similar type of incidents and events that could make them vulnerable. And let me speak clearly here. The account that Sarver gave out, the response was, I accept it. There's some things in there I don't agree with, but I accept the NBA's ruling. That's a very important point. Because if he didn't accept it, what's his next recourse, right? If the punishment was harsher, and he said, no, that's trash, I didn't do this stuff, what's he going to do? He's going to take it to court. We go to court, we file a lawsuit. What does that mean? Little word called discovery.
All the owners are afraid of that.
They're terrified of that.
I think, though, that so much of this isn't about the action and is about the reaction. When you get the video of Ray Rice, now you've got an appalled customer. It's not about the employees. It's not about the owner. It's what's the reaction going to be. And if I all of a sudden put in the mainstream news this penalty plus audio, this penalty, and now I add to it, you just said of Ray Rice, nothing changed between the initial punishment, then we see the video, the crime is the same, but now we've seen it, we're appalled, and the paying customer says that's got to be more than that. If there were audio of this, it wouldn't be the league that would get Sarver gone. It would be the public that would get Sarver gone because they couldn't withstand the backlash of that, of the paying customer knowing that the owner of the Phoenix Suns, they might not know anything else about Robert Sarver, is somebody who is in the middle of a racist scandal surrounded by that word.
So specifically as it pertains to the use of the N-word, 5 different instances, at least 5. 1, during a 2004 meeting to recruit a free agent. 2, during a 2012-13 Suns team building exercise in Phoenix. 3, after the Suns' October 30th, 2016 game against the Warriors. This one's really interesting. 4, at least twice between 2010 and 2017 in recounting an incident involving a player's family member. As early as 2004, Sarver was made aware that he should not use the N-word even when repeating another person's use of it. He was told that after the 2004 incident, and yet he continued because, again, he views it as some sort of a challenge. I pointed out the Warriors one because I think this one is the one where it's most charged. After an October 30th, 2016 game against the Warriors, Sarver complained to a black Suns coach that a Warriors player who is black had been allowed to say the N-word during the game without receiving a technical foul. I believe this player to be Draymond Green. They don't mention it in the report. In making this complaint, Sarver said the word loudly several times, even after the coach admonished him for doing so. The coach recalled that Sarver burst into the office after the game and loudly said, "Why does the Warriors player get to say N-word, 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 N-word?" After the coach said, "You can't effing say that," Sarver replied, "I can't say N-word, N-word, N-word?" A second witness present for the event recalled it in the same terms, and 2 other witnesses, one of whom heard Sarver and the coach arguing on the night in question, heard contemporaneous reports of the incident. In addition, and this one is the crazy one, Sarver sent a contemporaneous email to the league office complaining about the officiating during the game, in which, among several examples of on-court actions that he contended were incorrectly officiated, he purported to quote the Warriors player as saying the N-word spelled out with an A at the end. So the league has an email from Robert Sarver in which he's complaining about several things, one of which is that allegedly Draymond Green got to say the N-word, except he didn't say the N-word, he just wrote it in print in a league email.
Knowing what we know now, with there not being any audio or video, knowing that $10 million is the maximum allowable fine in this situation, and knowing that a lifetime ban is not on the table, what else could the league have done?
Well, okay, so not reaching the heights of banishment / making them sell the team. We take a step back from there. I would say multiple years suspension. The money is the money. You can't take more than $10 million off the. That's
negotiated. That's collectively bargained. It's everything.
It's the charter. It's not even. This has nothing to do with the Players Association. This is the NBA charter. This is what the 30 guys came together, and 30 guys and women came together and said, this sounds about fair. So much like a few years, they raised it actually because when it was Sterling, I think it was $4 million was the maximum. Yeah,
there you go.
So you start there, Roy. They can't fine him any more than they fined him, right? Could they have suspended him for 2 years, for 3 years, for 5 years? It would be the longest suspension for an owner ever. We've had suspensions of a year. We've never had anything multiple years. The other part of this, Dan, and I don't want it to be lost because the N-word part is going to receive a lot of attention, rightfully so. But more importantly is the toxic work environment that he presided over. He was responsible for, in part directly, in part indirectly, by what his kind of subordinates looked up to and said, oh, this is how we talk to people. This is how we deal with people. I've been in a lot of group texts with people who work and worked for the Suns over the last 24 hours. And they're all appalled because many of them were victims of this. Many of them were witnesses to this kind of behavior, this kind of treatment. And most importantly, many of them had no outlet. The report talks about it. The HR department was terrible. It was terrible. And the report talks about a bunch of stuff that they wanted, but they didn't have the documents for because there was a document purge. There should be no purge of that kind of stuff.
There was an anecdote in the New York Times where it said Sarver also made crude jokes, cursed at employees, and told a pregnant employee that she, quote, would be unable to do her job upon becoming a mother. According to the report, witnesses recalled Sarver saying that the employee would be busy, quote, breastfeeding, and that a baby needs their mom, not their father. The employee cried in response to his comments, and then he later asked why women cry so much.
Christ almighty.
He had an incident. They talk about a video for a going away video for someone, and he didn't like the video, so he screamed at the woman responsible for making the video, and she started crying, and he did the same. Why do women around here cry so much, right? And so they talked to him like, man, you can't be flipping out on people like that. So his response was to have a kind of women-only summit in which employees from the Suns got together with employees from the bank that he owns and he's the CEO of. And basically he was trying to like get the women that work for the bank to try to teach the women that work at the Suns, oh, this is just how Robert is. In other words, why are you guys crying so much?
So you mentioned that the league got together and changed the bylaw, raised the fine after the Donald Sterling situation. Would they do it again after this instance?
I think they have to. I mean, like, look, you know what, Roy? Let me take a step back. I don't think they have to unless they feel pressure, because that was a big thing at the time. People were saying you fined him $4 million, and then his ultimate, punishment was here's $2 billion, or I guess $1 billion, because Shelley Sterling, who by the way is no saint herself, got $1 billion also out of that deal. That didn't seem fair, so they raised it. But again, like, I think if people are upset and this stays a topic, then we'll get harsher penalties.
No, it's over now. It's not going to be upset. There's no video. There's no audio. It's not a name owner. It's not a public scandal that's going to echo for days in the news stream.
Not talking to Magic Johnson.
It's not a whole thing. This will even though the NBA in an independent investigation where they're not exactly incentivized to find the most horrible things about this guy. They have said that these things are fact. And I mean, one of the things I don't think you mentioned while saying and most importantly, and most importantly, and most importantly, is that he's gone, but the people that are complaining to you via text who still work there know that the people in charge of the Suns are still the people who presided over that toxic workplace as soldiers for Sarver.
Many of the people who were responsible for some of the other stuff in the report still work there.
You owe $5. You're struggling with the cough button, but you didn't pay the $5 from before either. So you...
Let's see if I got any cash.
By the way, I mean, the other thing, too, is if you go back to the Donald Sterling thing, one of the things I'm surprised hasn't happened is the critical mass of player voices. Because you have to remember, the Donald Sterling thing not only happened with video and audio, it happened in the middle of the NBA playoffs. And in the middle of NBA playoffs in which the Clippers and the Warriors were threatening to protest a game and flatly not play.
The timing of when this is coming out is not coincidental. 2 weeks before Media Day?
Wait, 2 weeks before Media Day and on the heels of NFL Week 1. They knew. The league knew this is going to get swallowed.
Well, yeah, and you're right, Dan. Unfortunately, it just is not a big enough thing. And also, it sort of fits into a broader thing that's happened in the culture. Let's use Donald Trump as an example. Old, rich, white guy doesn't face consequences for his actions, or not consequences enough. Like, that is a narrative that we unfortunately have become numb to. And so I don't think there's going to be this great public, all right, what is my great public outrage about Robert Sarver? Is he going to lose his team? Probably not. He's rich, he's white, and he's powerful. You can't take his shit away from him. The other owners don't want their shit taken away from them, so they're not incentivized to take away Robert Sarver's shit away from him. Like, it's sort of a helpless feeling of, all right, he'll probably be the owner in a year's time, he'll do some shit in 3 years' time, and we'll be back here again.
Do you think the NBA saw that report that Queen Elizabeth was sick and started scrambling to put together all of these documents? That seemed like a good time for a news dump, right? Yeah. Everyone was pretty singularly focused on
They still missed it, though.
It's such a great point by Whittingham. Of course, the players being someplace in front of and around reporters and super pissed off. Now, Suns are going to have a problem whenever their media day is 2 weeks from now, and all of these guys get asked all of these questions about everything happening in Phoenix, but by then it will have been dwindled. The timing, I've thought the timing was strategic. It's a couple of weeks before training camp. It's not a couple of days. It's not during the season. It's enough time for this to pass through the news stream and be something that somehow becomes just a regional story when Phoenix reports to camp.
There's another element to this, by the way, and that is that, and I don't think this is by design, it's just by divine providence for Robert Sarver, that the Suns are good. The Suns are a good team now. This happened 2 years ago. The city was ready to swallow him alive because they were already angry that the team has been bad for a decade. But because the team has been good the last 2 years, a championship contender, I think there is maybe it's a subconscious feeling of separation between, well, that's Sarver. That the Suns are fine. The team, I like the team. I love the team. Team's fine. But Sarver, yeah, he's bad. As opposed to the team had been as bad as it was prior to Chris Paul getting there. People would have been like, see, like, this is why we suck and he's terrible. Get him out of here. I think the local pressure to get him up out of here would have been much greater than it is now.
Always comes back to winning.
Always. I'm sorry for causing this pain, and these errors in judgment are not consistent with my personal philosophy or my values. Yes, it is. It's exactly. It's the most consistent thing ever.